technologies to me are like fashion. There's always a new one, and they, have a life cycle, and then the old ones come back into vogue.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Monica Cravata. I'm here today with Jason Goth, Partner and Chief Technology Officer of Credera. Jason, thanks so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you. Tell us about Credera. Tell us about your unique value proposition. And I know you're a global technology consulting firm with 3,000 consultants around the world. What's your specialty? What's your passion and what you do for the world?
Thanks for having me, Monica. Like you said, we're a consulting firm, and we really focus on four things. One is strategy, product strategy and company strategy, go to market, kind of experience design is two, and then technology implementation, and then data and insights. So that's where we tend to focus. As a result, we tend to work with those parts of the organization that are very customer focused, right? Marketing, e-commerce, mobile, frontline operations, customer service, those things and type of things. And we're really try to take a data-driven approach to improving, those areas with customers.
I know as part of what you do is helping clients to adopt emerging technology. And I'm curious how that plays out and runs parallel to marketing strategies as those are evolving.
Like all parts of the business, marketing is increasingly dependent on technology, really for almost everything they do, whether that's generating content or messaging or, targeting, determining who to target with what message, how do you deliver that, through web, mobile, different platforms. How do you do a lot of testing, evaluate those results, and all of that is really driven by technology.
What kind of challenges do you all encounter in terms of wrestling through outdated tech and just that transition that can be kind of painful as you're moving from one to the next?
Well, everyone has some, form of legacy system or, manual process. And, those things sometimes need to be replaced or automated. But, we usually don't find that those are the biggest issues, right? We can replace systems and we can automate processes. I think the bigger challenge is usually people, right? And getting people to change the way that they work around some of that, technology implementation. And just to give an example, we had a client that was a cosmetics manufacturer, and we had built a lot of data to correlate, different things that were happening online, social media and other things with their sales. And we found that, there were a couple of influencers online that had a significant impact to, driving online sales. And, so we had proposed doing some kind of, different things with those people. And it turned out, the response from the client was well, all of our marketing dollars are already allocated to projects this year that and some of those we've prepaid for. So we can't do it because those things were budgeted a year in advance. And so the challenge really wasn't building the systems, right, to gather that data and analyze it. It was getting the organization to change the way they budgeted.
Can you share more? You had mentioned earlier about Credera having sort of a technology strategy framework. Can you share more about what that is?
We tend to start, and I know this is also going to sound cliche, but start with the business goal. What is the end you're in mind? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to drive online sales? Are you trying to, reduce drive-through times for a restaurant or the number of mishandled bags at an airport, right? Really, what are those metrics? And then, which a lot of people do, but, the big thing we do is think about how do we measure that, right? And oftentimes you'll see a lot of implementations get done and that you won't know if they're successful. It's not that they didn't think through the measurement of it. It's there's no way to actually measure it. And sometimes they don't think through the measurement of it. And sometimes we even build the wrong measures. Right. And, and so, which will drive bad behavior or the wrong behavior. And so think about the measurement and then what needs to change, right? And so it's kind of you hear the people, process, technology, and we would throw data in there, like what additional data do you need? Mm-hmm. And what are those things that have to change? And so, that, I think if you talk to a lot of consulting firms, that would be very similar, in their approach. But then our step is then to, we're not going to go we are going to go address those things, but it's not, our goal is not just go fix it and leave.
It's iterative and constantly improving and based on what you learn. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jason, I'm a brand person. So I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of technology trends and how that plays into brand strategy.
There's a huge impact on marketing. I don't know if it directly relates to brand strategy, but I think the two biggest impacts, on marketing and on brands right now, are two sides of a coin that kind of pull against each other. Right, one is personalization, and the other one is privacy. And technology has enabled a lot of personalization. If you think of a retailer, 20 years ago, putting up the new e-commerce site, they might have a shirt, it might have 5 colors, 5 sizes, 3 different people modeling, 1 in 4 languages. That's 300 variations, right? And no one could go do that, much less now you've got to manually figure out, do some, analysis and spreadsheets and figure out who to give what message to. But, all of that can be done with AI today, and all the targeting can be done with models. And so you can really run, your brands can really run experiments, 1,000 times, thousands of them daily, and really drive a lot of results. But the opposing force to that is privacy, obviously. And there's a real challenge there with legislation, the deprecation of a lot of the third-party cookies and a lot of the mobile, ID changes that are restricting what can be measured. And so, companies are going to have to really start looking, at first-party data and away from these third-party sources. And, I think the marketers are going to be really stuck in the middle of those two things.
We did notice that you had a great new CMO survey research study that you were sharing out. I wonder if you have any highlights that you might want to speak to on that.
It's a huge concern for CMOs, and it's somewhat of a very uncertain environment because, who knows what, legislation, you're getting so many different jurisdictions. I just saw, who was it, was ordered by, a very strange thing, a U.S. company ordered, to divest of another U.S. company by a European court, and so, which is not, strictly a privacy thing, but that was more of a monopoly, and competitive thing. But, you are seeing a lot of jurisdictions, whether it be CCPA in California or the GDPR, and you have these overlapping jurisdictions around data and privacy. And so, there's a lot of uncertainty around not just what do we do, or how do we do something, but what is it that we need to do, and mm-hmm. I think that's going to continue to be a challenge until some of these things get more normalized, the legislation gets more normalized.
So I know one of your clients involved a large restaurant chain that was needing to improve the quality of their software deliverables and reduce time to market. And now, after working with Credera, they're more competitive. Could you walk us through some things around what y'all did?
Their problem was the inability to adopt changes. Where that's integrating, new delivery providers or making changes to the loyalty program or supporting online, order, pick it up through the drive-through, those type of things. Those all have a technology aspect that have to be deployed. Big restaurant chains, when you have thousands, tens of thousands of restaurants, it's like hard to get those changes out. And not being able to deploy them has a huge cost of delay, right? So if you think, well, during the pandemic, if we can do online, order and pick up, curbside pickup or drive-through pickup, that has a, 5% revenue impact, let's say. Well, if you can't get that out for 6 months, you've lost 5% of revenue for 6 months, right? It's a huge impact.
Right.
And so, all right, well, as I said, we start with well, then what are the metrics, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just where we made, what is, again, it seems like not a hard change, but it's a really difficult change for companies who in technology have always been measured on pretty much two things. Is the project on time and is it on budget, right? Yep. Not how many deployments, and we turned it into how many deployments did we do successfully this month and how much revenue did each generate?
It sounds to me like, I haven't played that back, it's helping the really large companies who are trying to make a technology shift that's ultimately going to drive more revenue for their business and what it enables. But if they're in a pure execution mindset that is just get it out and it's just the get it done and get it out and it's just a schedule versus an outcome-oriented focus where everybody's looking at the business impact, that then can result in the accelerated project or accelerated time to market.
Right. And then also if you have those, really, long efforts, then you don't know until the end if they work. And if you get something out in a month, you can know if it works in a month. If you don't get anything out for 12 months, you don't know if it, did you spend 12 months building? We call that achieving failure, right? Uh-huh. You built something for 12 months and it doesn't work.
So I'm curious, as a CTO, I know you have a long history of working with different technology, your perspective on open source as kind of a digital accelerator.
Well, I think open source is a huge digital accelerator. I mean, many things that we have today are, driven out of the open source community, whether it be Linux, right, was obviously the big one, and many, other innovations, Kubernetes, right? Spark, for big data processing, or, all of these things. The open source community really drives a lot of that because you just get more, you get millions of people, and millions of ideas to work on it. And so I think it has been a huge driver, and I think it will continue to be a huge driver of innovation in companies.
Do you all do any projects with clients or consulting around WordPress?
It's great that we can get open source sites up quickly, right, with WordPress, when marketers need to or other people need to, but they don't often have the skills around some like scalability and security and support and maintenance and those kind of things. And so that's another example, WP Engine or those companies that will provide the hosting, provide the open source as a hosted solution rather than a supported one. We think is a really good direction for, especially, teams that don't have as big a marketing or a technology support staff.
Just rounding out this great conversation with you, would love to just hear what personally inspires you and what gets you up in the morning.
This may be really surprising from a CTO, but I don't get excited about new technologies all that much. Technologies to me are like fashion. There's always a new one, and they have a life cycle, and then the old ones come back into vogue, right? And so you see a lot of new technologies, but most of them are rehashes of old technologies, and the ones that are new, quickly become mainstream. And so it's not technology so much that really excites me. It's really using that to solve problems, and work with clients and really solve their hard challenges. And I'd say the second thing I get excited about is really doing it with the team here at Credera. I love, the team here, they're great to work with, and we have a lot of fun, right? We want to work with clients where we have a lot of fun solving hard problems. And that's, I think, what gets me the most excited about doing this.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jason. That was Jason Goth, partner and CTO of Credera. And thanks for joining us for Velocitize Talks.